Dzień dobry. Dzisiaj odcinek specjalny dla wszystkich tych z Was, którzy chcieliby wziąć udział w naszym projekcie jako tłumacze, ale nie do końca wiedzą jak. Nigdy do tej pory nie tłumaczyli tekstu literackiego. Tekst piosenki jest na swój sposób tekstem literackim. Nie wiedzą, jak się do tego zabrać, a angielski znają całkiem nieźle. Zatem właśnie, dzisiejszy epizod będzie w całości w języku angielskim. Zapraszam. Okay, ready? Well, I won't be using that today because I'm not sure how long exactly it will take me to explain everything to you. Well, not everything, the absolute basics. Because normally, when I do some literary translations with my students, with more advanced groups of my students, it takes me 90 minutes to explain the basics and then exercise them with my students. So I'll try to keep whatever I've got to say to a bare minimum and I'll try to illustrate whatever I'll be talking about with some examples of really brilliant translations that some of my really brilliant students did earlier this year. Kuba, Tomek and Ola translated lyrics for a band called Black Mirror. This is a band founded by one of my good friends. And now they get to see their songs or their translations of their lyrics sang from a stage. And this is more than a lot of people can say about themselves. And that's at the age of 17, which also is quite an accomplishment, right? So kudos to you, Kuba, Tomek and Ola, because you've done a great job, yeah? So whatever you see on the screen will be their translations. I will use mine as well at some point, but just because I have to illustrate another thing that I found it impossible to illustrate using examples just from their translations, okay? So first, okay, Black Mirror, you've probably never heard of them, so check them out. Well, let's find out how you like them. So that was a fragment of a song called The Hell of Death, translated by both Tomek and Kuba. Well, actually, both of them came up with really good translations, but Kuba's was a little bit better when it came to brilliant ideas, while Tomek's had a perfect rhythm. Well, what I did was splice them together and make something that the band is now singing from the stage. Okay? So a piece that you've just heard sung will allow me to talk about the first two rules of literary translations. Namely, first, rule number 1. It must sound natural in English. Whatever you come up with, whatever you write down, has to sound good in English. Okay? So it doesn't have to be word-for-word translation. Right? Have a look at shot 1 down that Kuba came up with. Okay? It sounds like something that a native speaker of English might have come up with. Really, honestly. It's like the most natural thing to say in a situation like that. Not that you often find yourself in a situation like that, right? Okay. Rule number 2. Don't worry too much about being too literal. Yeah, have a look at the second verse. Okay? It's just the howl of death. And compare it to the Polish version, to the original. Okay? It's quite different. It doesn't say the very same thing, but the image, the sense, the general atmosphere is exactly the same. And it sounds good in English, right? So we're coming back to rule number 1. And this is what it's all about, okay? It has to be natural. It has to also convey the general atmosphere and the general sense of the text. Don't be too literal. Yeah? Literal as in dosłowny. Be literary as in bądźcie literaccy, kreatywni. Okay? Well, yes, I'm Polish. I wasn't supposed to use that, but yeah, whatever. Well, now, before we move on to rule number 3 and 4, let's just have a look at another piece of a concert by Black Mirror. Okay, ready? Okay, so that brings us nicely to rule number 3. And this is keep the rhythm and the rhymes in the song, if, that is, there are any rhymes. Okay, so first of all, if you have a look into the second line, yeah, what Ola came up with, because this is Ola's translation, was your name. Yeah, Świętosława was your name. There are 4 words, yeah, in the translations, while Świętosława imię twe, sorry, are only 3 words. But that doesn't matter. The rhythm, the rhythmic pattern of a sentence is exactly the same. So don't worry about counting words. Well, worry a little bit about counting syllables, but most of all, worry about the overall rhythm of a song. Yeah? If what you come up with is possible to be sung in the same kind of pattern, natural pattern that the original was sung in. Okay? So it also rhymes, if you notice. Okay? It's not a typical rhyme, it's a so-called off rhyme, which means rym niedokładny. And if you have a look into the Polish version, it also contains an off rhyme. So very well done, Ola, very well done indeed. Yeah, you just cracked it the way you should have, okay? And finally, well, something that I've already mentioned, I think, the number of syllables doesn't always have to be exactly the same as in the original. Yeah, the overall rhythmic pattern has to be. But if you have a look at she ruled over Denmark as a Dane would, okay, so that's the second line in the stanza, and compare it to the Polish original, what you will notice is that the original has got 8 syllables, while the translation has got as many as 10, so 2 extra syllables. But if you know the song, if you've heard it before, you will notice that it's possible to actually sing those 10 syllables within the time span, within the space that the singer has got to do it in. Okay? So, in the end, those 2 extra syllables did not matter that much. Okay? But the rhythm, or as long as the rhythm was kept, and it is kept, it has been kept. Okay? Right, and rule number 4. And the rule number 4 is only for those of you who have not felt challenged yet, who so far have been following everything, thinking, yeah, that's just all too obvious. Right, so if you think you cut out for that, then follow my 4th rule as well. Okay, have a look at this. What you can see in front of you is a piece of the lyrics for another song by Black Mirror that I happen to translate myself. Okay, have a look at the first line especially. Dismal, somber vessels sailing sullen seas. Okay, too many S's, right? S's, and sometimes some of them are pronounced as Z, so there are a lot of sibilants, those those kind of sounds, right? Okay, that's called alliteration, and that is an old Germanic, I'd say Anglo-Saxon tradition within English literature. Okay? It dates back to more than 1,000 years ago, and the English people are still doing that. If you open any newspaper, you will notice that very often the headlines alliterate. They alliterate, meaning many words within one title start with the same sound or start with the same letter, to make it easy, right? So while the original Polish line did not alliterate, I thought, well, hell, why not? If I can do it, if I know how to do it, I will. I tried, and I managed to, well, in one line only, but it's still something. It's still a knowing wink to those who know English a little bit better, okay? And if you can't do alliteration, you might experiment with sounds in any shape or form. If you can find some interestingly sounding connections of sounds or combinations of sounds, then I'm sure your translation will sound better in English for it, okay? So this is basically it. Those 4 rules, once again, yeah, to round everything up nicely. Yeah, the translation, whatever you come up with in English, must sound natural in that language, okay? Secondly, don't be too literal. Get the general meaning and the general feeling of a text, the atmosphere of it. Number 3, keep the rhythm, okay, and keep the rhymes. And finally, number 4, be creative and alliterate or use some other combinations of sounds that will sound interestingly or in an interesting manner, right? That's not really a word. Okay, thank you very much. If you've got any questions whatsoever, you can ask them in the comments section, or you can come up to me at school and ask me personally, and I will happily advise you how to carry on with your work. Okay, you've only got a week to complete whatever you're supposed to do. I hope you will come up with some brilliant ideas. And finally, well, one thing that I have to say, well, before we finish, I've forgotten what I was supposed to say. Oh, right, yeah. Some of you are waiting for the corny joke, słuchaj, right? Okay, so I'm wearing a Star Wars themed t-shirt, so a Star Wars themed słuchaj. Okay, why did Anakin Skywalker cross the road? To get to the dark side. Okay, now, ties in nicely with the heavy metal that we've just listened to. Okay, thank you very much for now, and see you soon.